The House will come to order. Prayer by the chaplain.
Let us pray. Holy One, on this 10th day of Ramadan and Earth Day, tired after a late night last night, we give you thanks for your goodness and mercy which never fail, your compassion for all you have made, and for the way that you gather up the broken pieces of human life and bring wholeness to all that is, returning balance to creation and human life, and providing abundantly for all our needs, restoring the oneness which we seek and find within and all around us. We confess, O God, our fear of scarcity, which drives us to hoard more than we need and deny others the sustenance necessary for all of us. We confess our fear of powerlessness, which we seek to hide by shows of power and secure by any means necessary, harming others. And we confess our indifference, by which we shield our hearts from breaking in the face of poverty, prejudice, and the misuse of the earth. Calm these fears this day, O God of many names, and open our minds and hearts to listen to one another, speak the truth in love, and seek the common good with perseverance and courage, so that this government and its people may find unity in lifting up the lowly and satisfying those who thirst, healing the earth and filling the hungry with good things. For you are the wholeness, the balance, and the oneness which we seek, within and among us, and in all the earth and sky and waters you have made. Amen.
The chaplain for today is Reverend Rick King from Falcon Heights United Church of Christ in Falcon Heights, Minnesota. Pledge of Allegiance. Members, please remain standing and recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Members, when the chief clerk calls the roll today to establish a quorum, please state your name, your location, and that you are present. Members who are using the remote voting application should also press the green yay button when your name is called. The clerk will take the roll.
Acom.
Acom, Minnetonka, present.
Acom, Minnetonka, present. Agbaje.
Agbaje, St. Paul, present.
Agbaje, St. Paul, present. Ackland. Ackland, St. Paul, present. Albright.
Albright, Prior Lake, present.
Albright, Prior Lake, present. Anderson. Anderson, St. Paul, present. Backer.
Backer, Browns Valley, present.
Backer, Browns Valley, present. Bonner.
Bonner, Maple Grove, present.
Bonner, Maple Grove, present. Barr.
Barr, East Bethel, present.
Barr, East Bethel, present. Baker.
Baker, New London, Spicer, present.
Baker, New London, Spicer, present. Becker, Finn.
Becker, Finn, Roseville, present.
Becker, Finn, Roseville, present. Bennett.
Bennett, Albert Lee, present.
Bennett, Albert Lee, present. Berg.
Berg, Burnsville, present.
Berg, Burnsville, present. Bernardi.
Bernardi, New Brighton, present.
Bernardi, New Brighton, present. Bierman.
Bierman, Apple Valley, present.
Bierman, Apple Valley, present. Bliss.
Bliss, Beltrami County, present.
Bliss, Beltrami County, present. Bow.
Bow, Carver County, present.
Bow, Carver County, present. Bolden.
Bolden, Rochester, present.
Bolden, Rochester, present. Burkle.
Burkle, Skagen Township, present.
Burkle, Skagen Township, present. Carlson. Carlson, St. Paul, present. Christensen.
Christensen, Stillwater, present.
Christensen, Stillwater, present. Daniels.
Daniels, Faribault, present.
Daniels, Faribault, present. Doubt. Doubt, St. Paul, present. Davids. David, St. Paul, present. Davney.
Davney, Minneapolis, present.
Davney, Minneapolis, present. Damath. Damath, St. Paul, present. Detmer. Detmer, St. Paul, present. Drazkowski. Drazkowski. Drazkowski, St. Paul, present. Eklund.
Eklund, St. Paul, present.
Eklund, St. Paul, present. Edelson.
Edelson Edina, present.
Edelson, Edina, present. Elkins.
Elkins, Bloomington, present.
Didn't get it. Elkins.
Elkins, Bloomington, present.
Elkins, Bloomington, present. Erickson.
Erickson, St. Paul, present.
Erickson, St. Paul, present. Feist.
Feist, New Brighton, present.
Feist, New Brighton, present. Fisher.
Fisher, Maplewood, present.
Fisher, Maplewood, present. Frankie.
Frankie, St. Paul Park, present.
Frankie, St. Paul Park, present. Franzen.
Crampson, St. Paul, present.
Franzen, St. Paul, present. Frazier.
Frazier, Hennepin County, present.
Frazier, Hennepin County, present. Frederick.
Frederick Mankato, present.
Frederick, Mankato, present. Freiburg.
Freiburg, Golden Valley, present.
Freiburg, Golden Valley, present. Garofalo. Garofalo. Gomez.
Gomez, Minneapolis, present.
Gomez, Minneapolis, present. Green. Green, St. Paul, present. Greenman. Greenman, St. Paul, present. Grossel.
Grossel, St. Paul, present.
Grossel, St. Paul, present. Gruenhagen.
Gruenhagen, Glencoe, present.
Gruenhagen, Glencoe, present. Haley. Haley, St. Paul, present. Hamilton.
Hamilton, St. Paul, present.
Hamilton, St. Paul, present. Hanson R.
Hanson R., St. Paul, present.
Hanson R, St. Paul, present. Hanson J.
Hanson J., Burnsville, present.
Hanson J, Burnsville, present. Hassan. Hassan. Hausman.
Hausman, St. Paul, present.
Hausman, St. Paul, present. Heinrich.
Heinrich Anoka, present.
Heinrich Anoka, present. Heinzman. Heinzman, St. Paul, present. Her.
Her, St. Paul, present.
Her, St. Paul, present. Hertas.
Hertas Greenfield, present.
Hertas, Greenfield, present. Hollins.
Holland, St. Paul, present.
Hollins, St. Paul, present. Hornstein.
Hornstein, Minneapolis, present.
Hornstein, Minneapolis, present. Howard.
Howard, St. Paul, present.
Howard, St. Paul, present. Hewitt.
Hewitt, Rosemount, present.
St. Paul? Hewitt, Rosemount, present. Igo. Igo, St. Paul, present. Johnson.
Johnson, St. Paul, present.
Johnson, St. Paul, present. Jordan. Jordan, St. Paul, present. Jurgens.
Jurgens, St. Paul, present.
Jurgens, St. Paul, present. Keeler.
Keeler, St. Paul, present.
Keeler, St. Paul, present. Keel.
Keel, St. Paul, present.
Keel, St. Paul, present. Cleavorn.
Cleavorn, Plymouth, present.
Too loud back here. Cleavorn, Plymouth, present. Cagle.
Kegel, Spring Lake Park, present.
Cagle, Spring Lake Park, present. Katiza-Wattoon.
Teeza-Wattoon, Eden Prairie, present.
Katiza-Wattoon, Eden Prairie, present. Cosnick.
Cosmic, Dakota County, present.
Cosnick, Dakota County, present. Creshaw.
Grishaw, Little Falls, present.
Creshaw, Little Falls, present. Lee.
Lee, St. Paul, present.
Lee, St. Paul, present. Liebling.
Liebling, Rochester, present.
Liebling, Rochester, present. Lilly.
Lily, St. Paul, present.
Lilly, St. Paul, present. Lippert.
Lippert, Northfield, present.
Lippert, Northfield, present. Listagard.
Listagard, St. Paul, present.
Listagard, St. Paul, present. Long.
Long, Minneapolis, present.
Long, Minneapolis, present. Lucero. Lucero.
Lucero, Wright County, present.
Lucero, Wright County, present. Lewick. Lewick, St. Paul, present. Mariani. Mariani. Marquardt.
Marquardt, St. Paul, present.
Marquardt, St. Paul, present. Mason.
Mason, Egan, present.
Mason, Egan, present. McDonald.
Donald Delano, present.
McDonald, Delano, present. Mecklin.
Mecklen, Sherburne County, present.
Mecklen, Sherburne County, present. Miller. Miller, St. Paul, present. Moeller. Moeller, St. Paul, present. Moran.
Moran, St. Paul, present.
Moran, St. Paul, present. Morrison.
Morrison, Deep Haven, present.
Morrison, Deep Haven, present. Mortensen.
Mortensen, St. Paul, present.
Mortensen, St. Paul, present. Mueller. Mueller, St. Paul, present. Munson.
Munson, Lincoln Township, present.
Munson, Lincoln Township, present. Murphy.
Murphy, Lake County, present.
Murphy, Lake County, present. Nash. Nash, St. Paul, present. Nelson M.
Nelson M., Brooklyn Park, present.
Nelson M. Brooklyn Park, present. Nelson N. Nelson N. St. Paul, present. New Brindley. New Brindley, St. Paul, present. Noor.
No, Minneapolis, present.
Noor, Minneapolis, present. Novotny.
Novotny, Elk River, present.
Novotny, Elk River, present. O'Driscoll.
O'Driscoll, Sartell, present.
O'Driscoll, Sartell, present. Olson B.
Olson B., Faribault County, present.
Olson B. Federal County, present. Olson L. Olson L. St. Paul, present. O'Neill.
O'Neill, Maple Lake, present.
O'Neill, Maple Lake, present. Pulowski.
Pulowski, Winona, present.
Pulowski, Winona, present. Petersburg.
Petersburg, Wasika, present.
Petersburg, Wasika, present. Farr.
Farr, LeSueur, present.
Farr, LeSueur, present. Pearson.
Pearson, Rochester Township, present.
Pearson, Rochester Township, present. Pinto.
Pinto, St. Paul, present.
Pinto, St. Paul, present. Poston.
Poston, Lake Shore, present.
Poston, Lakeshore, present. Pryor.
Pryor, Minnetonka, present.
Pryor, Minnetonka, present. Quam.
Guam, Byron, present.
Quam, Byron, present. Raleigh.
Raleigh, St. Paul, present.
Raleigh, St. Paul, present. Rasmussen. Rasmussen, St. Paul, present. Ryer.
Ryer, Egan, present.
Ryer, Egan, present. Richardson.
Richardson, Mendota Heights, present.
Richardson, Mendota Heights, present. Robbins. Robbins, St. Paul, present. Sandell. Sandell, St. Paul, present. Sandsted.
Sandsted, St. Paul, present.
Sandsted, St. Paul, present. Schumacher.
Schumacher, Laverne, present.
Schumacher, Laverne, present. Schultz.
Schultz, Duluth, present.
Schultz, Duluth, present. Scott.
Scott, Andover, present.
Scott, Andover, present. Stevenson.
Stevenson, Coon Rapids, present.
Stevenson, Coon Rapids, present. Sundin.
Sundin, St. Paul, present.
Sundin, St. Paul, present. Swazinski.
Swazinski, Nordland Township, present.
Swazinski, Nordland Township, present. Tice. Oh, Tice, St. Paul, present. Thompson. Thompson. Torkelson. Torkelson, St. Paul, present. Erdahl.
Erdahl, Acton Township, present.
Erdahl, Acton Township, present. Vang.
Vang, Brooklyn Center, present.
Vang, Brooklyn Center, present. Waslowick. Waslowick, St. Paul, present. West.
West, Blaine, present.
West, Blaine, present. Winkler. Winkler, St. Paul, present. Wolgamott. Wolgamott, St. Paul, present. Zhang Jie.
John J. St. Paul, present.
Zhang Jie, St. Paul, present. Zhang T. Zhang T. Joachim.
Joachim Hopkins, present.
Joachim Hopkins, present. Speaker Hartman. Speaker Hartman.
Speaker Hartman, St. Paul, present.
Speaker Hartman, St. Paul, present. Garofalo. Garofalo. Hassan.
Hassan, Minneapolis, present.
Hassan, Minneapolis, present. Mariani.
Mariani, St. Paul, present.
Mariani, St. Paul, present. Thompson. Thompson. Zhang T.
Zhang T. Maplewood, present.
Zhang T. Maplewood, present.
The clerk will close the roll. A quorum is present. The clerk will read the journal of the preceding day.
Journal of the House, 92nd session, 2021, 44th day, St. Paul, Minnesota, Wednesday, April 21st, 2021.
If there is no objection, further reading of the journal will be dispensed with, and the journal will be approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Hearing no objection, the journal is approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Comparison reports. A copy of this order of business is online. If there is no objection, the motions will prevail. Hearing no objections, the motions prevail and the substitutions will be made.
Skip committee reports and go to second reading.
Second reading of Senate files.
Second reading Senate file number 193.
Second reading.
Second reading Senate file number 443.
Second reading.
Second reading Senate file 1807.
Second reading. Introduction of bills. The following House file has been offered for introduction today. The chief clerk will report the House file and give it its first reading.
Introduction of first reading of House file 2563.
First reading House file 2563. Messages from the Senate.
Message from the Senate. Madam Speaker, I hereby announce that the Senate accedes to the request of the House for the appointment of a conference committee on the amendments adopted by the Senate to the following House file. House File number 1077, an act relating to housing. The Senate has appointed as such committee Senators Draheim, Duckworth, Dames, Pratt, and Diedzik. Message is signed Cal R. Ludeman, Secretary of the Senate. Madam Speaker, I hereby announce that the Senate refuses to concur in the House amendments to the following Senate file. Senate file number 972, an act relating to commerce and energy. The Senate has appointed as conferees Dames, Senjum, Utke, Matthews, and France. The message is signed Cal R. Ludeman, Secretary of the Senate. Stevenson moves that the House accede to the request of the Senate and that the Speaker appoint a conference committee of 5 members of the House to meet with the like committee appointed by the Senate on the disagreeing votes of the 2 houses on Senate file number 972.
The member from Anoka, Representative Stevenson, to your motion. The member from Hennepin, the Majority Leader, Representative Winkler.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to take up the Stevenson motion and make sure we can get that wonderful bill to conference as quickly as possible.
All those in favor of the Winkler motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no.
No!
The motion prevails.
Message from the Senate. Madam Speaker, I hereby announce the passage by the Senate of the following Senate file herewith transmitted. Senate file number 151. The message is signed Cal R. Ludeman, Secretary of the Senate.
First reading of Senate files.
First reading Senate file number 151, an act relating to the state lottery. Katiza Watun moved that Senate file number 151 and House file number 832, now on the general register, be referred to the chief clerk for comparison.
Hearing no objections, so ordered. Report from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration.
Winkler from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration, pursuant to Rules 1.21 and 3.33, designates the following bill to be placed on the calendar for the day for Monday, April 26, 2021, and establishes a pre-filing requirement for amendments offered to the following bill. House File number 2128.
There's a motion at the desk. The clerk will report the motion.
Winkler moves that Senate File number 958 be taken from the table.
The member from Hennepin, the Majority Leader, Representative Winkler, to your motion.
Mr. Speaker, members, this is to take the ag bill from the table so that we can bring it up for consideration. I ask for your support.
Further discussion to the Winkler motion. All those in favor of the Winkler motion that Senate file number 958 be taken from the table, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no.
No.
The motion prevails and Senate file 958 has been taken from the table.
Clerk will report the bill.
The clerk will report the bill.
Hang on, I gotta talk to you about that. Senate file number 958, an act relating to state government establishing a budget for the Department of Agriculture, the third engrossment. Now we want to say this,
Representative Sundin, would you like to put the House language in before you present your bill?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to move the DE 1524 amendment. This is the House version of the bill, and I ask for your support.
Clerk will report the amendment. That's it right there.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Sundin moves to amend Senate file number 958, the third engrossment, as follows. Delete everything after the enacting clause and insert the following language of House file number 1524, the second engrossment. The amendment is coded DEA 1524.
Discussion to the amendment. Representative Sundin.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker and members.
Excuse me, Representative Sundin. Hearing no discussion, we move that the Sundin amendment be adopted. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no.
No.
The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Sundin, to your bill.
Senate file 958 is the Omnibus Ag Finance Bill and Broadband Bill. I'll give a few overview comments of the agricultural provisions and then defer to Chair Eklund to talk about broadband for a few minutes. Before we get going, I'd like to thank a number of people that have played a critical role in putting this bill together. I have Vice Chair Samantha Vang was a tremendous help. Rob Eklund, a trusted friend on the committee. Jenny Cleaver, Tim Miller, Rick Hansen, Todd Lippert, Nathan Nelson, John Burkle, Jess Hansen, and Dale Look, and John Thompson all played a role in putting this bill together. And I'd like to especially thank a friend of mine, Republican lead Paul Anderson. My hope is everyone that serves in this body encounters a trusted friend and cooperative, adversary across the aisle of a high caliber of Paul Anderson. So that said, thank you very much. Nonpartisan staff included Chris Carpenter, Nate Gottlieb, Ken Savory, Colby Sullivan, and partisan staff, Margaret Martin, Harry Miracle, and Bennett Smith all played a critical part as well. Committee staff, Kyle Smith and Nancy Connolly, they were the quarterbacks here. So I appreciate the help from all these parties. I also appreciate the bipartisan nature of the committee. This package reflects the input of all the members, the administration, and dozens of people who provided testimony throughout the session. Just an overview of the bill. Article 1 is the appropriation section for ag-related accounts. The bill provides funding for our three main accounts. Minnesota Department of Agriculture, the largest, has general funding spending of 112 million for FY 22 and 23. That's an increase of about 5 million. The Board of Animal Health has general fund spending of 12.1 million for the biennium, a small increase of 300,000. The Ag Utilization Research Institute general funding spending of 8.1 million for the biennium reflects an increase of about 300,000. A few of the highlights of the bill. We did focus on the basics throughout the bill. This budget provides the critical funding necessary to continue basics, core functions of our three accounts, and provides targeted new funding, including additional funding for necessary lab equipment upgrades to fulfill regulatory functions, farmer mental health and outreach, farm safety grants, additional farm advocate services, and a 1% increase in funding to maintain current level of services at MDA and the Board of Animal Health. This funding will help the public remain confident about the safety of the food they eat and products they consume. The agencies can provide oversight and regulation and provide the programming to keep agriculture strong in Minnesota. Access to food and supply chain issues were addressed. We know not everyone has the same access to fresh food. Our urban communities with larger BIPOC populations and small rural areas face the greatest challenges associated in being in a food desert. This bill doubles the amount provided for grants for good food access in communities without access to grocery stores. Urban agriculture and farm to school early care provided through Agri. Urban ag and access to fresh food is something Representative Thompson worked on, and Representative Lippert has worked on farm to school for the past few years. This bill also provides base level funding for the farm to food shelf program and expanded types of food available through it. We heard compelling testimony from Second Harvest Heartland and we are advocating that they and the food bank network will again have access to federal funds to meet increased needs. Representative Jess Hansen took the lead on this issue this year. On the supply chain, this has been an issue prior to the COVID-19, but the pandemic emphasized the need for additional small and medium-sized livestock meat processors to meet increased demand and need for options. The bill includes a number of items to fulfill that need. We have important work to do in front of us. Although the ag budget is relatively small in terms of the general fund spending, agriculture is a major contributor to our state's economy. We continually look for new ways of doing things and new markets for what we produce. These markets and strategies not only help on the economic side, but also open more doors for opportunity to make agriculture broader and richer in the people participating. Highlights include additional funding for international trade and new markets, continued development on industrial hemp, an increase of 1.79 million is provided for Agri, the value-added grant program that supports all types of ag and seeks to prioritize underserved communities. Of the total amount provided for Agri, additional funding, a $1 million a year increase for a total of $4 million a year going forward was targeted to the bio incentives program to partially meet increased activity in that area. And funding was carved out for a new biofuels infrastructure grant program to expand access to biofuels. This is something Representative Paul Anderson has been working on for a number of years and was a governor's recommendation as well. This doesn't increase biofuels mandate, but instead helps provide infrastructure so biofuels are available more broadly. Technology continues to develop and see this as a second prong to other electric vehicle initiatives. This bill provides base level funding provided for AGREET, the program that funds research and education at the university and other groups. In addition to the funding, language offered by Representative Chair Rick Hansen and Representative Vang to require reports back on how funding for Agri and AGREET was used. Thank you for that. Finally, this bill acknowledges the times are changing and how well we adapt and make corrections will play into how we fare moving forward. There's a changing of the guard in ag. The average age of Minnesota farmer is 56 years old, and roughly 99.16% of Minnesota farmers are white and largely male. And looking to the future, we have an opportunity to address past inequities by supporting segments of the population who aren't currently represented or supported, namely people of color, Indigenous people, women, persons with disabilities, and veterans, among others. The bill includes a number of provisions that deal with emerging farmers and farm transitions. This bill increased the focus on soil health and environment. The bill continues to invest in strategies designed to increase agriculture best management practices and increased attention to soil health, something Representative Lippert took the lead on this year, and includes a new seed labeling requirement and restrictions on treated seed use and disposable to help address issues with neonics and pollinators. A continuation of Chair Hansen's efforts in this area. Also note that the bill does include an increase in the pesticide gross sales fee for ag and non-ag pesticides to help address the recommendations from the recent Office of Legislative Accounting report regarding increased oversight and more fully fund necessary lab equipment. This bill also addresses a broader range of farming opportunities. There's increasing interest in approaching farming and reaching consumers in different ways. How well we support these folks will determine the direction of an important part of ag, and the bill includes provisions in these areas. We believe a number of these initiatives touched in the bill will be high priorities for the new federal funding. We have communicated our interest in using federal funds on issues involving hunger, food access, emerging farmers, urban ag, and livestock processing, as well as value-added grants and farmer mental health and outreach, and based our budget with an eye on that funding. Article 2 includes a number of provisions that are policy associated, and the financing provisions have fiscal implications but no money attached. That it's the farmer lender mediation and a handful of policy issues that moved out of the Ag Committee on a bipartisan basis, but were rolled into this bill to align with the Senate. That concludes my wrap up of the Ag articles. I'll turn this over to Chair Eklund to cover the broadband section of the bill.
Excuse me, Representative Sundin, with all due respect, I need to interrupt you at this moment. The member from Clay, Representative Keeler, for what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Sorry to interrupt, and I know that we did this on Monday, but the governor has requested that we take a statewide moment of silence for Daunte Wright. As we all know, the situations that's going on, and we just need to acknowledge the fact that our community is still going through a lot of pain and a lot of healing. We do this together. We do this as humans. So I just request a moment of silence. Thank you.
Members, please rise to join us in a moment of silence to honor the memory of Daunte Wright, his loved ones, and his community. The member from Carlton, Representative Sundin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That concludes my overview of the bill. I'll turn this over to Representative Chair Eklund to cover the broadband section of the bill.
The member from Koochiching, Representative Eklund.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members, and thank you, Chair Sundin, for including broadband in your omnibus agricultural bill. Mr. Speaker, members, today I present Article 3 of the Agriculture Omnibus Bill. This article includes broadband funding provisions for the state's border-to-border broadband grant program and annual funding for the Office of Broadband Development. $30 million will be available for the grant program in the first year of the biennium, and $350,000 per year will go to fund the Office of Broadband Development, which disperses and oversees grants. The office also provides resources and support to communities looking to better their broadband service. The pandemic has put a bright spotlight on the need for access to broadband internet. We have all heard the stories of families taking turns using the internet for homework or Zoom calls, even piling into the family van to go to McDonald's parking lot just to get a connection. We also heard about places like Rock County that have border-to-border access because of our state grant program. The county administrator recently told the governor's broadband task force that only one student in the entire county did not have access to a connection to do their homework. And that's only because their family was moving at the time. This program has worked and will continue to work. Study after study shows that students, businesses, farms, and families that have access to quality broadband do better. And the need for broadband is not going away when the pandemic ends. Working and learning from home will look a little different than it has during the pandemic, but it is here to stay. However, Mr. Speaker and members, the lakes, forests, hills, and valleys, and other features that make our state beautiful to live in are a major challenge to the deployment of broadband. 157,000 homes and businesses without broadband service are the most difficult to serve, where the business case for investment by an ISP does not make sense. In these areas, our state grant program provides up to 50% of a project cost. If this bill were passed, the state's $30 million investment will bring in at least $30 million in matching funds from ISPs and their community partners. It is a true public-private partnership and is known across the country as the Minnesota model. And that's something we can be proud of. We have invested $130 million in this program since 2014, and we know it works. Every year, the Office of Broadband Development receives more applicants than it can fund. Our state statute says that every Minnesotan should have an internet connection of 25 megabits per second download and 3 megabits per second upload by the year 2022. That jumps to 100 megabits per second download and 20 megabits per second upload by the year 2026. The $30 million investment in Senate File 958, House File 1524 will make a big difference in rural communities across the state and help us move toward meeting our state's goals. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask for your support, and members, I ask for your support, and I will stand for questions.
There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Sundin moves to amend Senate File number 958, the third engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A1.
The member from Carlton, Representative Sundin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a clarifying amendment that says the provision regarding federal fund eligibility applies the ag article, not the entire bill. So I'd ask for your support to clear this up. Thank you.
The member from Aiken, Representative. The member from Aiken, Representative Lewick. Oh, excuse me, Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was wondering if somebody had changed my name here, but anyway. Thank you. Would the chair of the committee stand for a question, Mr. Speaker?
Excuse me, who are you asking to yield to a question?
The chair of the Ag Committee, Representative Sundin.
Representative Sundin, will you yield?
Certainly.
He will yield.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. Chair Sundin, I've appreciated working with you as well this year. You know, we're from different parts of the state, and I think we've taught each other things about where we live, and I've really enjoyed working with you as well. I have to ask a question on your amendment here. You know, it's just a small word act and insert the word article a couple of times. And I think it has to do with making agriculture funds available to be reimbursed by the federal money when that comes in. But I have to ask the question, why not make the broadband portion eligible as well? And maybe this is a question more suited to Chair Eklund, but I'll start off by asking you why we don't make the broadband funds also eligible for reimbursement by some of the federal money coming in.
Representative Sundin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My understanding is there are two separate pots of money there, and I guess if there's an issue in the broadband section of the bill that had a mix-up on the words, that could be corrected there as well. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but there's two different pots of money there.
Representative Anderson.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. Well, I guess that's the answer we'll go by, so I appreciate the answer, but I certainly would encourage us to look at ways to also make that broadband money eligible to be reimbursed and put back into our general fund if that's possible. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion to the Sundin amendment. The member from Carlton, Representative Sundin.
Ask for your support on the amendment. Please vote green.
All those in favor of the A1 amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Lewick moves to amend Senate File Number 958, the third engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A4.
The member from Aiken, Representative Lewick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, the A4 amendment would remove a small section in the bill before us that would make changes to the makeup of the Board of Animal Health and also how those people are appointed. I think it's very important that for those of you that don't hang out in Ag Committee or directly involved in livestock or poultry production to understand the critical role that the Board of Animal Health plays for all of us. Their mission is to ensure the health of our domestic livestock. That's poultry and livestock. There's a couple of reasons for that really directs everybody. It impacts everybody in this room as well as all the people that are out there listening. First and foremost, there are diseases that our animals can contract that are also very dangerous to the humans. So it's very important, and this agency goes out, looks for those kind of diseases. If they find them, they take action to isolate them and eliminate them. So they're kind of the fire truck people there on things like tuberculosis, anthrax, brucellosis, rabies, all kinds of things that most of you may not think about, but those types of diseases are prevalent in our domestic livestock. It happens, and it also happens in wild animals. Second part of that is, and another important thing that they do, we cannot have diseased animals entering the human food chain. So they're the first line of defense there. Really, really important role. If in fact they do detect an issue, they take action to eradicate it, make sure it doesn't spread, those type of things. So this is a big deal. When you tinker with an agency that's been in operation for many, many years, one of the oldest agencies that we've had, we want to do it very carefully. It's a 5-member board appointed by the governor with consent of the Senate. There are some ex officio, very important people that surround that board, and I think we're just a little premature in changing the number on that board and how we would select those people, or who would select them. So what my amendment does is just simply leaves us as status quo and lets us to continue to work on that. And they say the bill as it reads now would move the board up to 7 versus 5. That's something that I think Chair Sundin and a bunch of us can continue to work on. It changes the makeup of the board. Right now, it's three individuals that are actively involved in livestock animal production and 2 veterinarians. We can work on the mix of who should be involved in that. These folks that are on that board, they are appointed by the governor and then with the consent and advice of the Senate. And that's very important. That has kept that board from sliding into political. So it gives us a voice in the legislature. There's another thing about, and I want to really continue to work with Chair Sundin on this. In the current bill language, it proposes to add a tribal member to that board. It would be a 7-member board with the language in the bill. I've thought long and hard about that, and my amendment doesn't try to fix that, and I would ask that we look at this a little more thorough, because I've got some concern. One of the elements would be to add a tribal member to the board, and I don't have any heartburn with that. I represent a lot of tribal members from my district. I know Chair Sundin does. We're neighbors. We deal with tribal government all the time. Here's my concern. If we expand the board to 7 people and then have a tribal member appointed by the governor on there, that tribal member is only 1 of 7. And when I say that, think about that. They represent all the tribes, but we got some ex officio people that are in the room and work with that board. It's the Commissioner of Agriculture, Commissioner of the DNR, and the Health Department Commissioner. And this is one, Chair Sundin, and why I think we should just leave this alone and you can accept my amendment. Let's work on this. I would just propose, at least to be studied, why wouldn't we want to make a tribal member, an ex officio at the same stature as these commissioners? So I throw that out there as an idea. It's not in my amendment, but obviously it's something I'd like to continue to work with on the chair with. So I'm just concerned that rather than make that member 1 of 7, let's put them at that same level as the commissioners, because they will represent all the tribal governments across the state of Minnesota. But again, members, I would just encourage a green vote on this. Let's slow down. Let's think this through. Let's gather a little more input on this one, because we can get this done without making any really rash decisions here. So anyway, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member from Candy, Ojai, Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Luke, for noting this in this portion of this bill. I support your amendment. I think it's the right thing to do at this time. Members who weren't here in my first term, who weren't here yet, we had avian influenza which spread across the state, and it was high path, and birds were dying very quickly. Matter of fact, usually by the time a vet would get out to confirm that it was avian influenza, the barn was dead. And so then we had to start destroying them. And I will tell you that out by me, we have lots of turkey barns, lots and lots, many, many chicken barns and that sorts. And there's nothing quite like having to go to a barn and seeing where they foamed. What they do is they spray in foam to suffocate the turkeys, 25,000 turkeys at a time. There's a layer operation in Renville County. It's no longer under operation, but it was at the time. They had to euthanize, I think it was about 3.5 million birds, all from the same location, 4 birds at a time. It was not a pretty thing. This was a massive undertaking in some ways, and I don't want to make too many comparisons, but in some ways it's not too different than the COVID-19 response. Different set of circumstances, and like I said, I don't want to make too many comparisons, but you saw this mobilization. At the center of it was the Board of Animal Health. And I remember the director of the board, or the head of the Board of Animal Health told us, or maybe it was the lead veterinarian, maybe she said it, but somebody said, it's like building, and we've heard this cliche before, it's like building a 747 while it's flying. Well, they built a miraculous 747. They did an incredible job, so much so that the plans moving forward, after that, we had said, how do we have to look at this is like a unfortunate practice run for potential future disasters. How do we go about this? Now, if you remember, the federal government came into this, took the lead that actually caused some problems. So the future plans has the Board of Animal Health leading all of it in the state of Minnesota. And there's other states that looked at the model that our Board of Animal Health did and are trying to emulate that. Members, this is an incredible organization that runs a very important task here. And the reason why they do so well is it's one of the last vestiges in Minnesota where an appointed agency is driven by its mission. Not with political involvement. They just have their job. They have veterinarians that do a very good job. They know what they have to do. They do it very well. In recent years, we've had different types of amendment or bills like this that have come forward to change it. And quite frankly, members, it's just because a couple people have a beef with how the Board of Animal Health works. I don't know that the legislature should get involved like that. So I think it should stay the same. I do want to make one comment for understanding on the tribal members. Right now, a tribal member can be part of the Board of Animal Health. That's an appointment by the governor. That's not a problem. So we aren't expanding anything by doing that. I think, members, we need to support Representative Lewick's amendment. I think that if we're going to do anything for the Board of Animal Health, we're going to do everything we can to support and endorse them rather than try and tinker with them. Thank you, members.
The member from Brown, Representative Torkelson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The adage is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think back to my first experience with the Board of Animal Health. Predates even my presence here in the House of Chamber. Back in 2005, there was an outbreak of bovine tuberculosis in Minnesota. It infected both cattle and wild deer. The Board of Animal Health instituted a 168 square mile zone where we eliminated as much of the wild deer herd as possible, successfully eliminated bovine tuberculosis from both domestic animals and the wild deer herd, tested that for, I believe, about 8 years, verified that it was gone, took care of a problem that could have affected both of those herds, both wild and domestic, and did a tremendous job. Others have related other incidences of where the Board of Animal Health has done tremendous work. Please vote green on this amendment. Again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
The member from Roseau, Representative Burkle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I won't harp on and I just wanted to chime in. The Board of Animal Health does excellent professional, extremely professional work. We don't need to politicize it. It's not a political entity. As a turkey farmer who actually walked through an actual foaming procedure on my farm, I can tell you that the help that the Board of Animal Health gave during that time in 2015 in my farm was very professional, and it was done well. And it's an organization that follows their mission. So I want to just chime in with what Representative Lewick said, in particular what Representative Miller stated. As someone who's worked closely with the Board of Animal Health in a disease crisis situation, I hope that members vote green for this amendment. Thank you.
The member from Pope, Representative Anderson.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. I won't belabor the point. Just want to support what's already been said with high praise and support for the Board of Animal Health. And seeing Representative Burkle on the screen as he was just talking reminds me, whenever the highly pathogenic, was that back in 2015 or 16, whatever, he actually came down here with Representative Fabian and testified before the Ag Committee. And just sobering to hear somebody talking about the losses in their barns and not wanting to go in there in the morning to see if there may be trouble in there. So again, yes, the Board of Animal Health is highly respected. Our major groups support them. They don't want to make this a politically appointed type of situation. They want the board to select their own executive director, who then becomes a state veterinarian, very important position. And I don't think the Senate's going to want to give up their ability to confirm some of these members, so there's going to be some changes made. But again, just a lot of positive support for the Board of Animal Health. There's reasons kind of behind the scenes why some of this is being talked about, but this is not the place to make changes, and I too support the amendment offered by Representative Lewick.
The member from Cottonwood, Representative Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Chair Sundin. I would ask that we would support the Lewick amendment, and quite simply, the executive director, they should be hired based on their qualifications and not her political affiliations. And it's as simple as that. We want the best person for this position, and again, not have the politics get involved. So once again, they should be hired based on their qualifications and not their political affiliation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member from Carlton, Representative Sundin. Representative Sundin, you are still muted. Please unmute yourself and proceed with your discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a couple of comments regarding the concerns of the representatives voicing in their opinions here. I would first say regarding the makeup of the Board of Animal Health, there used to be a small animal vet on there at one point, and there's desire to put another one back on there, and this would adding one specifically for small animals is great. We talked about transmission of diseases from animal species to species, and even possibly even into humans' bloodstreams. This is a distinct possibility. You are all correct with your concerns there, and that applies to small animals as well. I think it's a good idea to include a small animal vet there to round out the concerns for all the animals in the state of Minnesota. In regards to the native or the registered band member being a part of the Board of Animal Health, I think it's an excellent idea. One of the bands approached me with this idea, and I thought, let's think this through a little bit. What are the bands doing that would really pique their interest to be involved here? And the deal is some of these bands that control an expanse of acreage in the state of Minnesota are proposing to put elk out on their reservation lands or ceded lands, and that's their privilege or their right to do that. And I'd just as soon be cooperative with them and have them involved in the decision making, so the introduction of elk is done properly and doesn't pose a threat to cervid farms that are operating right now, and more importantly is to keep the CWD disease out of the deer population statewide. That's $1 billion industry that lasts just a couple of weeks, but it's very important to many Minnesotans. And I would actually thank the tribes for desiring to cooperate and be a part of the decision making. So I'm anxious to include this. So I would still ask for your support on sinking this amendment, and then we'll move forward to the next amendment.
To the author of the amendment, Representative Lewick.
Thank you, members, for a good discussion. I could have talked about my first direct experience with the Board of Animal Health, and it was what Representative Torkelson talked about. I sourced breeding cattle from the northwest part of the state, where right off the farm where we had tuberculosis break out in that herd up by Sky, Minnesota. So, but you know, I pledged to work with the chair on this. I would just ask us to slow down. I really understand and want to work with making sure we include the tribal governments appropriately at the appropriate level. And I certainly, the idea of putting an additional veterinary expert on there makes sense. If it's 7 people, fine. But again, I think we need to just slow down here and do just a little more detailed hearings. And this is one thing we don't have to do this year. This is one we could tackle next year. So with that, I would just ask a green vote. Thank you.
Further discussion to the A4 amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no.
Aye.
No. The motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Green moves to amend Senate File number 958, the third engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A8.
To the author of the amendment, Representative Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because we talked about this the other day and it sounded like there was some support for it on the other side of the aisle. And there was an issue, or there is an issue that's kind of ongoing in greater Minnesota, mostly with our ag community, where the agencies, I'll just say agencies, are imposing restrictions, regulations, fees, denying permits, and they're using old information. What this bill intends to do is to try to set a base for what nitrogen is occurring naturally. And Mr. Speaker, if it's all right with you, I think I'm going to allow some other people to talk on this. They have some information, and then I'll close.
The member from Pine, Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the Green Amendment is, monitoring nitrogen. And most of you know that I farm. One of the programs I'm in, it's a conservation program, and we have to do a soil test every year, testing the health of the soil. So it monitors the nutrient levels, and it also does calculations on that to give a score on soil health. And I've got the soil test in front of me, and this was taken back in August of last year, August of 2020. And I was in conversations with the district manager. We were discussing, we've grazed this farm. I'm the third generation on the farm. We've grazed this pasture for somewhere around 70, 80 years. We've never put any fertilizer on it. It's just it's kind of been rotationally grazed, and we're just trying to test to see where the level's at. What are we doing? Are we going the right direction with this? And I said, recently my brother and I bought an adjacent property that's forested. It's never had livestock on it other than a deer or a turkey wandering through it, and the occasional hunter. And I said, I'm just out of curiosity, I'm gonna pull a soil test on there, because that's not, it's almost like the Lost 40, not quite as pristine as that, but I said, I'm curious on that, because, we don't have the, nothing's been done on there. So I pulled a soil test on there. And what's interesting is, these are about 300, 400 feet apart that I pulled these soil tests. And the soil levels are nearly identical. One of them's had grazing on cattle for almost 80 years. The other one has had acorns and leaves falling on it, some pine needles, and it's nearly identical. And what's interesting is both of them had about 36 pounds of nitrogen, when it's calculated out by the parts per million. It works out to about 36 pounds of nitrogen just naturally occurring. It's never had it applied. It's there. Some legumes are there. We also know that we do get some nitrogen out of a thunderstorm. So, and I really appreciate this amendment, and I think it would be good if we could continue working on this and really understanding how much nitrogen is naturally occurring in the environment, what is there, and what are our goals moving forward. And one of the things that we need to know when we're making plans and making goals is we need to be able to measure. And I appreciate this amendment, and I would encourage you to vote green on this. It was brought up and discussed in the Agriculture Committee, and it was then laid over, and I would appreciate a green vote. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member from Carleton, Representative Sundin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Nelson was absolutely correct. We heard this bill in the Ag Committee and laid it over. But since that time, I connected with the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, and also when this amendment was presented in another committee, and learned that studies have in fact already been done in this area. Monitoring these specific state land areas beyond the existing state monitoring network is unnecessary. DNR was a big part of this study. So, and the operating increase that is addressed there initially is definitely necessary. So if there's any technical information that you would like to explore, there might be some input from Chair Hansen. And I would urge a no vote.
Further discussion to the A8 amendment. To the author of the amendment, Representative Green.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It sounded like Chair Sundin said that there was tests done. I couldn't really hear him very good, and so I hope he can verify that. But if that's the case, would he yield for a question?
Representative Sundin, will you yield?
I will.
We'll take that as a yes. Representative Green.
Well, maybe it's not going to do any good for us to ask him to yield if I can't hear him, but I've been trying to get results for the tests, and I believe they're there somewhere. I don't know where they were taken. I'd love to know that. But I would love to see the results for those tests. Do you have the results for those tests that they say they have?
The member from Carleton, Representative Sundin.
Mr. Speaker, I do not have those test results in my hand at this point. That's why I did refer to Chair Hansen if he had any particular information on this.
Representative Green, would you like to ask Chair Hansen to yield to a question?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I would.
Representative Hansen, will you yield?
Yes, I will.
He will yield. Representative Green.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Chair Hansen. Chair Hansen, are you aware of these tests, and do you have the results for these tests?
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Green. I would refer you to a very famous study done by former Professor Giles Randall, who was out of the Wasika Experiment Station with the University of Minnesota. And Dr. Randall had, for decades, done tile line studies, looking at the nitrate concentration in tile water with various applications. And of course, with any good scientific study, they had a control. So there's decades of data that were compiled. I think a simple Google search, Dr. Giles, G-Y-L-E-S, Randall, and his research. And I think he's actually testified in prior years about that research, and we could find that for you. In addition, I think Iowa State with the Soil Tilth Lab had ongoing research plots that had been, again, for decades. So many of the land grant institutions around the country have done that, and it's basic information that is provided. The particular sites that you are asking for, it has not been done there, but this is fairly basic soil science, and the research that was done by Dr. Randall is quite famous worldwide.
Representative Green.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Chair Hansen. And I appreciate that. And I will tell you that I've looked up a lot of stuff from private people. I've looked up studies from universities, but I've never seen anything where our agencies will accept those studies. And they're still arbitrarily going out and using data that in some cases is decades old. That's what's going on. So what my amendment does, it actually says the state of Minnesota, through the Department of Ag, is going to go out and they're going to test these lands. We know that these lands haven't been touched. We've heard other private studies, Representative Nelson has, that says he can verify on his land what's there. I've also got tests on phosphorus and other nutrients that are in the soil that occur naturally. But the point is, our state agencies aren't recognizing them. And so, Mr. Speaker, I see somebody else is standing, and so once again, I apologize for standing up more than once, but I'll close when he's done. Thank you.
Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative Green, for bringing the amendment. I think it's a great amendment to establish some additional data in this area. And I listened with interest from both Chair Sundin and Representative Hansen about this, because members, I've asked this question of the Department of Agriculture or Department of Natural Resources for years. And the question is this: we have policy that these agencies are encouraging, brought forward certainly by activist groups, to put more and more pressure on Minnesota farmers to get them to change their practices, to increase their costs in an eye for improving environmental quality, specifically water. So, members, I have asked these agencies, the Department of Agriculture, do we have the background information, the background number? In other words, What was nitrogen level like in that stream 200 years ago or 300 years ago before men and women came here? They don't have it. Representative, we don't have it. We don't know. They don't know for nitrogen. They don't know for phosphorus. They don't know for anything. But members, we continue, motivated by environmental activist groups, without any idea of where we're walking in the wilderness, bringing more regulations on to production agriculture in our state, telling them that you have to reduce your inputs here or change your manure practices here or do this differently without any basis of knowing what that background level is for nitrogen or phosphorus. What was it before people even got here? That's the number we need to come up with if we're going to be fair in this discussion around production agriculture. And Representative Green's amendment is a good one. It says, you know what, let's go to, I think it's a very creative amendment. Let's go to an area that agriculture hasn't impacted, that man hasn't impacted. And let's take those measurements. And maybe we'll know, or at least have another data point. And Representative Hansen, I've read some of Giles Randall's stuff, and he's done some very extensive work. My question is, when are we, and when is the Department of Natural Resources going to work with us on establishing these background numbers so we aren't arbitrary in our policy and arbitrary in our financial and regulatory penalties to farmers, when indeed they may not even be able to improve the quality of the water by their production practices. Members, distilled water never occurred naturally in the state of Minnesota. And it appears if we don't know what the background level is for these nutrients, if we don't know what the background levels are, then we are simply arbitrarily trying to push farmers to get to a point of distilled water. As somebody said yesterday, if that's the case, how dumb are we? Let's not be dumb. Let's figure out what that background level is, and let's bring the Department of Natural Resources, Mr. Speaker, with us, and let's pass amendments like Representative Green's amendment so we can get some more data to make the case and establish something that's actually based on science, Mr. Speaker, rather than emotion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Winkler, for what purpose do you rise?
Mr. Speaker, I considered rising to a point of order under Rule 2.31, offensive words in debate.
State your point of order.
But under custom and usage, I think I would just rather ask you to advise the body to watch the way we conduct our debate. Representative Drazkowski, I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but you several times referred to there being no people in Minnesota before 200 years ago, and I don't think that is what you would have wanted to say, but members, I think it's important to remember that what the words we use here can make a difference in how this body can or cannot be open to people of various backgrounds sent here by their districts. And so I don't think that we want to go down the path of constantly policing what we say under Rule 2.31, but we should be more careful. I would ask, Mr. Speaker, that you advise the body accordingly.
I will advise the body to please be thoughtful with their remarks and confine them to the question before the body, which is the passage of the Green A8 amendment. Further discussion to the amendment. The member from Candy, Ojai, Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Green, I have one of those studies that you're referring to. I'm sure many of you have heard, maybe some haven't heard of the Discovery Farms with the University of Minnesota. It's a very good program. They study all sorts of things. I want to say there's about 6 to 8 of them across the state of Minnesota at any given time. I'm not sure how many. But there was one a few years back that was in the Wilmer area. I think they're still doing some stuff. But they did this water study. There's a unique piece of land that is farmed near Wilmer to where all the water runs off to one point. And this, Representative Greens, is about soil. They did some soil tests too, but I want to make my point with this. It was a unique piece of land where all surface water went to one point. Now, people that are geeks about stuff like this know that surface water is difficult to measure because it goes all over the surface. This discovery farm outside Wilmer, they had a sampling machine which sampled water. It took a sample every 15 minutes for 5 years. And they had a University of Minnesota professor that was looking at the numbers. They studied all sorts of things, anything you can imagine, what they grew there, how much they grew there, didn't grow there, weeds, you name it. They did all sorts of studies. And they did many soil samples too through this. And when they were done, the Discovery Farm, this professor, I believe he's retired now, and this was on the Gorans farm. So I know from the Gorans farms, they own turkeys, they own a lot of other things. So I know the story through them. This professor produced his final report, and the numbers on nitrogen, on phosphorus, all these different things that we study, the numbers that they produced, the DNR and the MPCA rejected as false based on one factor. And that was the factor that it didn't fit with the models that they were already using. Now understand what Representative Green is referring to and Representative Drazkowski is they're creating these models based off of old information, partial information. They're building this kind of conglomeration of information regarding this stuff. So now we have a study that measures this stuff 15 minutes, every 15 minutes for 5 years. That's a pretty fair sample, folks. And when they come up with the numbers that they discover on this discovery farm through the University of Minnesota, they're rejected as not fitting with the models. I think this is backwards, and I think that Representative Green's amendment is a good amendment. I know, Chair Sundin, that when the minority brings forward an amendment to do something new, it's just outright rejected. I think this is something that we need to do. If you can't put it here on the floor today, I highly encourage you when you get to conference committee to do this. This is not painful. This is fact-finding. He's not asking for too much, but I do ask that you support Representative Green's amendment at this time.
Further discussion to the A8 amendment. To the author of the amendment, Representative Green.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think we can wrap this up pretty quickly. You know, I'm not asking for anything out of the ordinary. I'm not trying to punish anybody. I just want information. You know, since I was 13, I guess, my parents had a greenhouse and I worked in it then, and then my wife and I took it over and ran it for a couple of decades. And we used a lot of fertilizer there. And fertilizer, the way it's applied now is a science. If you apply too much, you can harm your plant. If you don't apply enough, your plants won't grow. Just as a side note, you also have vegetation in your water, so your water needs a certain amount of nitrogen as well. But all this is, you know, I could go into a lot of different stuff, but all this is I just want to know. I want to have something done by the state that the agencies will have to accept as far as what's out there. That's all. And so, members, I just would appreciate a yes vote on this. Move this forward. It's a small amount of money compared to the amount that's spent every year on some of these things. So vote yes.
All those in favor of the A8 Green Amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. The motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Anderson moves to amend Senate File Number 958, the third engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A7.
The member from Pope, Representative Anderson.
Thanks again, Mr. Speaker. This rather small amendment takes a slight amount from the department's operating money and puts it into a fund for depredation caused by wildlife around the state. And the reason that I brought this forward, I've been in contact with a couple of farmers pretty much all winter. You know, we didn't have a lot of snow this winter, And this particular farmer lives in an area that has a lot of DNR land, a lot of lowland areas and nature conservancy land. So there's a lot of wildlife there, a lot of deer. And he has a newly seeded field of alfalfa that's on an irrigated piece of ground. So it's highly productive and rather expensive to have an irrigator running. And alfalfa, as you may know, is a pretty expensive crop to establish. The seed is extremely expensive. And when the new plants come up, they're very fine, they're very delicate and sensitive. And when alfalfa gets to be a standard crop or established crop, its roots can go down 5 or 6 feet. It's a very hardy crop. But again, a newly seeded field is delicate and is subject to some damage. Anyway, this past winter, we didn't have a lot of snow, as I mentioned. And he reported that every day, especially morning and evening, he would have 100 to 150 deer out there in that field having their breakfast and then their evening meal as well. They would paw in what little snow cover there was, leaving kind of little gopher mound type pockets all over the field. And he's very concerned that this is going to make the field not usable and would be a very expensive loss for him. And he's talked to the DNR, I talked to the DNR, they talked to the university, and they offered to come out with some propane cannon type things, but you'd have to man those things, and they don't work when it's real cold either, I guess. And you can't fence it off because it's a pretty good sized field. So he could be facing substantial damage from the deer. So that's one reason. The other is Canadian geese, and they can do a lot of damage, especially in a soybean field. And I was just thinking back when I was a youngster, if we saw a Canadian goose in the fall, you would call the neighbors and say, hey, there's goose around here. But times have changed, and we have a lot of geese around the state, and especially around golf courses and in the waterland areas. And they go out into a soybean field from their lowland areas and eat the small plants as they come up. And what happens then is, the soybeans are gone and the weeds come up and you have a mess in that field. And I've had areas the size of a couple of football fields be just annihilated by geese as they've come up out of a slough and done their damage. So what this bill does, I don't want to take any funding away from our programs we have already for elk and wolf depredation, but this would put aside a slight amount for depredation caused by deer and Canadian geese in our farm fields around Minnesota, and I would ask for your support, Mr. Speaker.
The member from Carleton, Representative Sundin.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. To tell you the truth, we already have a program for wolf and elk depredation and carve out to protect stored crops from elk. This adds another carve out. Would have been good to have this discussion in committee with this bill. There might have been a way to include it at that time, but we don't know the magnitude of the problem, for one. Whether 20,000 or 20,000 would be sufficient, and how many people we're talking about. I could defer to Chair Hansen again for a little better understanding with the Wildlife Damage Management Program, if he were to choose so. But that fund is available for producers of stored forage crops damaged by geese, and especially crop growers, funded through the Game and Fish Fund. What we do know is that MDA has been working at high gear this past year and putting a number of things on hold. And if we start chipping away at this funding, which is pretty modest, we run the risk of positions being held open, projects delayed, or putting strain on dedicated fee accounts. So I would, with all due respect to Representative Anderson, I would encourage a no vote.
The member from Aiken, Representative Lewick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to speak briefly in support of Representative Anderson's amendment. And I agree with Chair Sundin. We do have some programs that deal with depredation. I've got a commercial strawberry farm right next door to me, and they got some assistance on fencing their strawberry farm, but that's only a few acres. Right down the road from me, McGregor, Minnesota, a lot of folks may not realize this, but we do commercial cranberries there. 3 big places in the country, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Massachusetts, that produce cranberries. The way that works with the cranberry farm, they have to rotate. They'll do cranberries a couple years, and these are actually old, originally wild rice paddies. They will then keep them dewatered, and they'll shift to soybeans to put nitrogen back in the soil so they don't have to fertilize. The problem is, just as Representative Hansen has mentioned, their soybean crops are decimated, literally decimated. We're talking 150, 200 deer. You could turn it into a zoo. Unfortunately, our depredation programs don't cover that. They would allow them to build a fence around that, but you can't, when you start building fences around a couple hundred acres, they have to work off the edge of those fields and those dikes. We just need to make some adjustments to this, and Representative Anderson's amendment would do that. I guess Chair Sundin, if you're not able to accept this, support this amendment, it's more work we're going to have to do next year. But anyway, I would urge a green vote for Representative Anderson's amendment.
Further discussion. To the author of the amendment, the member from Pope, Representative Anderson.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. Yes, we do have programs for stored crops. You can put a fence around a silage pile or a group of round bales where the deer climb up and do their thing. But this would be for standing crops in a larger area, and I would just encourage a yes vote. Thanks, Mr. Speaker.
All those in favor of the A7 amendment, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, please say no.
No.
The motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. There's an amendment at the desk.
Yes, oh yeah, he is sarcastic.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Anderson moves to amend Senate File number 958, the third engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A9.
To the author of the amendment, the member from Pope, Representative Anderson.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker, and I would request a roll call on this vote, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Anderson requests a roll call vote. Are there 15 hands? We might need some help over on this side. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call vote. Representative Anderson.
Bipartisan support. Thank you very much, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. Now, this amendment, getting back down to business, the ag bill, all in all, a pretty good bill, but it has a fee increase that has a lot of us in the ag industry puzzled and wondering about the size of the increase. And it may not seem like a big deal, a big increase. It's a fee increase on what we all pay when we purchase pesticides in this state. There's an agricultural pesticide fee and also a fee for those that purchase non-ag pesticides. And by the way, during the pandemic, there's been a lot more non-agricultural pesticides purchased. And this would be an increase in the cost of those if this fee increase would go into effect as well, Mr. Speaker. To give you an idea of what this fee is, on agricultural pesticides, it's 0.55 of 1%. And on non-ag pesticides, it's 0.5 of 1%. But it does bring in quite a bit of money. This past year, I think 2 years ago was the last numbers I could find numbers for. It brings in about $3.25 million.
Excuse me, Representative Anderson, I need to ask that you move your mask up so that it covers your nose for the safety of the staff and members in this chamber. Thank you, Representative Anderson.
My apologies, Mr. Speaker. And yeah, this fee brings in about $3.25 million a year, so it's a large sum of money. And of that amount, about 93% comes from the ag side. So that's by far the biggest contributor to this fund in the Department of Agriculture. And on the non-ag side, it's about $250,000 that comes in. And on the ag side, it's about $3.25 million. So the size of the increase is fairly substantial. On the non-ag portion, it's an 80% fee increase going from 0.5 to 0.9. And on the ag side, it's 0.55 to 0.9, which is a 64% increase. So because of the size of the increase, and we've discussed before in committee, that input costs are increasing rapidly for anybody purchasing farm inputs, diesel fuel, fertilizer, things like that, seed, going up in price as inflation seems to have taken hold in some areas of our economy. So because of that, Mr. Speaker, I would like that the fee not be included in the bill, and this amendment would take that fee increase away, and leave it the way it has been, 0.55 for ag and 0.5 for non-ag. And Mr. Speaker, I would encourage a green vote, and again, I ask for a roll call.
Further discussion to the member from Carlton, Representative Sundin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of points on this, and I think we all realize that fee increases are never popular, but the increase in the bill is reasonable and will fund some very important functions. I'm not going to reference all the percentages and the fee increase that Representative Anderson did. Those numbers are correct, but this increase is tied to March of 2020 Office of the Legislative Auditor, program audit of the Minnesota Department of Agriculture pesticide programs. The OLA recommended that the department expand its pesticide monitoring program to include 3 additional chemicals. This proposal is for increased funding to update pesticide analytical capability in the department's laboratory to include the 3 chemicals recommended by the Office of Legislative Auditor. The equipment needed to perform the analysis of these chemicals are currently not available at the MDA laboratory. The revenue will be generated through the fee increases on pesticide gross sales in Minnesota and used for the MDA laboratory to upgrade or add additional equipment to provide additional staff to perform analysis for the 3 additional chemicals and address other related pesticide management issues. It's not unreasonable to expect fees to cover the costs associated with the personnel and equipment needed to perform these regulatory functions. This is an area Chair Hansen has worked on, and I would defer to him if he has anything additional to offer, but I will also remind people that at the end of the day, this increase equates to about 8 cents on a $20 purchase. So it's a reasonable fee, and it goes to cover the critical functions of the department. And I would urge a no vote.
To the author of the amendment, Representative Anderson.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. Well, the fee increase amounts to about $2 million a year, $2.1 million based on past projections. So I feel that's a pretty substantial increase. There already is money in the ag bill for some increased purchasing of the equipment for the Department of Ag. And also part of this increase was going to go for education here in the metro area on the use of pesticides. So again, I would ask for a green vote to take away the fee increase in this bill on the purchase of pesticides. Thanks, Mr. Speaker.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the A9 amendment. Members who are voting remotely, please vote. Will the clerk call the names of all those members who haven't voted yet?
Baker.
Baker votes aye.
Baker, aye. Bliss.
Bliss, aye.
Bliss, aye. Frazier.
Frazier, no.
Frazier, no. Grossel.
Aye.
Grossel, aye. Gruenhagen.
Gruenhagen, aye.
Gruenhagen, aye. Hausman.
Hausman, no.
Hausman, no. Heinrich.
Heinrich, aye.
Heinrich, aye. Hollins.
Hollins, no.
Hollins, no. Kreshaw.
Grisha, aye.
Kreshaw, aye. Mariani. Mason.
Mason, no.
Mason, no. McDonald.
Donald, yes.
McDonald, aye. Moran.
Moran, aye.
Moran, aye. Nash. Nash, aye. Sandsted.
Samstead, no.
Sandsted, no. Swazinski.
Swazinski, aye.
Swazinski, aye. Tice. Tice, aye.
Moran is no.
Moran, no.
They get convicted.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 64 ayes and 69 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading as amended.
Third reading, Senate File number 958, as amended.
Third reading as amended. Discussion to the bill. The member from Hennepin, Representative Bang.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, thank you to the chair, Chair Sundin, and committee members, along with staff who all worked hard to put this bill together. It was a pleasure to be a member of this committee for the second term and be a vice chair. It's been an interesting committee process, especially during a pandemic, but I think we've been able to manage what we've got so far. Although I can't say this bill was ideal, I will just touch upon what made this bill better. And one of the great reasons why I enjoy being on the Ag Committee is the ability to focus impact on one type of community, and that is farmers. However, we all know that not all farmers are treated equally, from first-generation farmers to Black and brown farmers, face the most barriers in finding access to land, accessing financial capital, and accessing resources to support their livelihood. I'm grateful for the chair's consideration to add emerging farmers to this bill that will dedicate some funding to the working group and a full-time staff to engage and support emerging farmers who often don't have the resources and time to seek additional support. I also thank the chair for supporting additional funding for urban ag pushed by Representative Thompson in committee. As the hemp lead, I'm grateful for the one-time funding to further build an IT infrastructure as the hemp industry grows here in Minnesota. I'm also happy to be part of improving Minnesota cottage food law, which is critical to budding entrepreneurs and small businesses selling homemade products such as baked goods. Overall, although I would always like to see more funding, I think this is a step forward in prioritizing the farmers with the most need and investing toward the future of ag. I ask members for your support. Thank you.
The member from Pine, Representative Nelson.
Thank you. And as we look at this bill, I think it's kind of neat that we're looking at the Agriculture Omnibus Bill on Earth Day. Farmers, I think, are the first environmentalist. When I go around and talk to people, tell them that my real job is a farmer. That's what I do. I do come to St. Paul, support my district, represent them, but first and foremost, I'm a farmer. And it's a job that I love. And being able to take care of the land that we live on is something that for me, that comes first. You know, I live on the land, I drink the water, I breathe the air, and that's important to me and my family and hopefully future generations. And we care about that, and I'm thankful for many of the things that this bill does. I do have some areas of concern. And one of them is the extension of the farmer-lender mediation. I think it's a good program. It's a tool that you hope to never have to use. It's kind of like insurance. You hope that you never have to exercise your insurance policy, but it's there if it needs be. And it was started in the mid-'80s, and it was in response to the economic crisis of the 1980s in the farm economy. And we've had a few rough years in agriculture, but I think that there's brighter days ahead. And as we look at if you look at the grain markets today, they're nearly double what they were a year ago. Financially, farms many of them are improving. And the extension of the farmer lender mediation window, adding another, additional 30 days, it does buy some more time, but at the same time, if a lender and a borrower are in agreement, it's not limited to just a 90-day window. They can voluntarily go longer than that. And you might remember about a year ago, because of COVID-19, we extended the window out to 150 days to allow for meeting together and to just the logistics of it. At the same time, we look at what the difference between today and the 1980s, the number of Zoom meetings. We've got over half of our members today meeting via Zoom. They're not in the chamber here. Many of the meetings that we're having with our lenders are happening right now over Zoom, even in the good circumstances. And as technology has changed, as we funded broadband, I don't know that we really need to extend that window, because it's a whole lot easier to get together with a lender for maybe an hour-long meeting with Zoom, because you don't have to take the whole day off. You can run into the kitchen table and join a Zoom meeting, and we have that meeting with your lender and a mediator. And I have some concerns over that, but again, it is good to be talking about this agriculture bill on Earth Day, but I do hope that as it goes to conference committee, this can be addressed. So, thank you.
The member from Traverse, Representative Backer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. One of the things, and I had a good conversation with the chair on Monday, and unfortunately missed the deadline by 7 minutes. But one of the things that we are seeing out there, and actually I have been getting a call from one of Chair Marquardt's constituent up in Clay County about the agricultural chemical response and reimbursement account. That did not make it into this bill. I know it's something that's been drafted. It is in the other side of the bill. And I really would ask that the Chair Sundin would consider that going to conference committee. What it does, folks, is it's a reimbursement for the cost incurred in cleaning up agriculture chemical situations and so forth, spills. And the challenge, and I had a good conversation on Monday with Commissioner Peterson about this. The current rate on this is around reimbursement is 80% of 300,000, as long as the farmers or ag company like elevators, we have large elevators out here to that moves the grain and corn and so forth, as long as they follow the steps. And this was set back in the early 2000s. And the constituent actually from Clay County, not mine, but Representative Chair Marquardt, and of course, constituents in my areas have a concern. They would like to see this raised up to 600,000. And reason being is the Department of Agriculture is requiring more and more different tests. Now they're, I understand, talking to constituents and other farmers and companies in the district, and Commissioner Peterson, is that there are going to be water testing now. We do see more and more specialized fertilizers and other chemicals that require special lab tests when you're doing the soil. And like Representative Nelson talked about, farmers are the best stewards of their land. They realize that if they harm the land and not take care of it correctly, that's going to have generations effects. I am not a farmer. I've worked on farms when I was younger, picked rock. That's how I paid my way through college, haul bale, and helped several different farmers in both Minnesota and South Dakota. And one of the things I do appreciate is just how they care for the land. Now, yeah, there's a few bad apples. We have all bad apples, but they are far and few between. They understand how not to have erosion and so forth. And what they're trying to do here is they want to follow the guidelines set forth by the Department of Ag. But Chair Sundin, one of their concerns is that if we don't raise this limit, because you only can access it one time, then there is that possibility that all the tests may not be done as thorough as it should be if they can raise this up to reimbursement. So I would just ask the chair to consider that going into the conference committee and the other members that will be sitting on the conference committee. Again, we want, with it being Earth Day today, like Representative Nelson talked about, it is so vital and it is important to the constituents I represent, which is one of the largest areas of the richest farmland in our nation. I have the honor of starting the Red River Valley, continue through Marquardt's district, up through Keels and Burkholz district. We represent some of the richest farmland in the world right here, and it's an honor. And they want to continue to take good care of it. And there's times that mishaps happen. None of us ever want to step outside of our home and see a flat tire. Hiccups happen. And my constituents and other constituents want to make sure that it's handled correctly. So we'll just ask for that consideration. Just like Representative Nelson has said, is farmers want to take care of their land, and it is good to see some of the provisions in this bill. And I do have to say hats off to Commissioner Peterson. I've worked with him on a number of situations before he was commissioner and also now, and it's a pleasure to work with someone that has that background. And I do appreciate your work here, Chair Sundin, and lead Representative Paul Anderson. Thank you, Speaker, and members for your time.
The member from Aiken, Representative Lewick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank Chair Sundin and the staff. Really did a good job. Ag Committee is a fun committee to serve on. I'll just tell you that right up front. And there's some good things in this bill, and I'm gonna hit those high points really quickly. Obviously, and I want to thank Chair Eklund working with us, put those things in there on broadband. We all know rural Minnesota has got some really issues, big issues with broadband access. There's continue to fund some ethanol infrastructure, which is really important for blended fuels, renewable fuels. Increased funding for farmer mental health support. That's a huge deal. Not only do we have to suffer through COVID with everybody else, we were already in the middle of a farm crisis when COVID hit. And particularly want to thank the chair for making sure we continue to fund what depredation funding we do deal with, and that is when elk herds come in and destroy wheat fields, we have a little bit of mercy on that farmer and try to help him. And the same thing, we still, state of Minnesota still buys a lot of dead calves, horses, and other livestock with the wolf depredation because, so that's an important thing. Now, I say that those are the things that I can support, but there's some issues here. I think we're moving too fast on the Board of Animal Health. I agree with the chair. We certainly need to continue to look at ways to make that organization better, to broaden the support. So I think we're just a little premature on making those adjustments. don't want to relitigate that. And I think we're going to have a hard time dealing with the Senate, telling them that we're going to take away their ability to confirm those appointments. Those substantial fees that Representative Anderson talked about are a problem. We don't need that. Farmers are trying to dig out of a farm crisis. And we don't need to force specialized labeling for some of our products here in Minnesota, because that'll make us an island and make it more difficult for us to move seed corn and those types of things around. But with that, I just have to tell you, Mr. Chair, Chair Sundin, I can't support the bill as is, and I will certainly work with you day in, day out. We're not quite to the end of this, and I hope we can do a little shaping up on this and come back to the body eventually here with a bill that we can all support. So again, Chair Sundin and Chair Eklund, thank you for what you guys have brought to the committee, and appreciate it. But again, can't support it at this time, but I got more than an open mind, Chair Sundin.
The member from Rice, Representative Lippert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too want to thank Chair Sundin for his work with the committee, and thank committee members as well. There are great provisions in this bill, and here are some of the provisions that I'm pleased to see are in this legislation. The Agriculture Best Management Practices Revolving Loan Fund is an important provision that helps farmers get needed equipment to put best management practices on the landscape, like the practices that improve soil health. Similarly, the Climate Smart Farming certification of the Ag Water Quality Certification Program is also putting funding towards soil health building practices that are showing such promise for making the soil more resilient in the face of increasingly dramatic rain events, helping the water infiltrate the soil, mitigating flooding, improving organic matter, and some of these practices sequester significant amounts of carbon, reducing net emissions in agriculture. The bill also doubles funding for the Farm to School program, a program that benefits students in our schools and early learning settings by providing them with locally produced food that is fresh and nutritious, while supporting farmers that are growing food for our local communities and strengthening local economies. Finally, this bill helps keep farmers, especially small and mid-sized farmers, on the farm by both reauthorizing the Farmer Lender Mediation Program and providing an extra 30 days for the mediation timeframe, and I've been proud to work on that. More and more farmers have told me that increasingly the ag lending landscape has changed, and they're dealing with large national lenders and more creditors. These lenders aren't connected to the community, and more time will help farmers navigate increasingly complicated financial situations and distant financial institutions, and hopefully help them avoid a farm ending sort of scenario. So this program provides important protections for farmers. So I'm pleased to see these provisions in the bill along with many more, and I'll be supporting it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member from Pope, Representative Anderson.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. My final comments as well. I've enjoyed working with the committee this year. Thanks to our nonpartisan staff, Ken Savory, Colby Sullivan, they do great work. Harry Miracle, our researcher, and Nancy Connolly from the DFL side, always great to work with them. And also thanks to Chair Sundin as well. If I could just take a couple of minutes and talk about the Biofuels Infrastructure Financial Assistance Program that's in the bill. I feel pretty strongly about improving our state's greenhouse gas emissions. You know, transportation is the largest single source of those emissions. And I think that moving to an E15 blend of gasoline is the most immediate way that we can reduce our greenhouse gas emissions in Minnesota. Electric cars are on the way, but we can do this immediately, go to E15 as much as we possibly can, and make a big difference. And I think, too, that ethanol represents the biggest single opportunity to grow the economy in rural Minnesota. We have the size of scale out there already. There are 19 or 18 ethanol plants already operating in the state, and we want to keep them going. They employ a lot of people. They provide gross national product to our state. They provide revenue for wages and such. They also pay a lot of taxes, state and local taxes in Minnesota, so they are a very integral part of our rural economy. This program sets up a committee that helps the Commissioner of Agriculture. It's going to be up to 15 members representing agriculture, biofuels industry, and motor fuel retailers. And the initial program, at least in this bill, has $4 million. The Senate has a higher total. And also pleased to report that the Minnesota corn growers have come forward to offer $1 million as part of a state and federal or state private partnership, and hopefully also get some additional federal dollars to make this a bigger pool of money. Because about 10% of our stations currently can offer E15. Because of EPA regulations, tanks that are certified for E10 cannot handle E15, that higher blend of ethanol. So a lot of stations have to make some improvements in their dispensers or underground tankage to be able to handle E15. And right now we have about, I mentioned 370 or so that handle E15. That's about 10% of our state's number of retail outlets, and want to get that up to a higher percentage to help both our environment and the economy in rural Minnesota. So thanks for that. Some of the things in the bill, I like the financial pieces in the bill, but some of the policy issues are a little bit troubling to me. One of them was already mentioned, the treated seed issue with the neonicotinoids. We would be an outlier again, as our state would be the only one that would have to have this additional tag on the label. And a lot of this was brought about because of an issue with an ethanol plant out of state. I believe it was in Nebraska. But we don't dispose of treated seed that way in the state, never have, and I don't think ever will. Talked to one farmer and he said, this seed corn costs about $400 a bag. I don't want to waste any of it. And if you have a couple of bags left over, you either save them for next year or turn them back in to the seed company, and they'll do a germination test and use those again if they can. And if not, a lot of that gets donated to folks like Pheasants Forever for their food plots and such. So this stuff does get used up in a responsible manner. You know, we talked about the Board of Animal Health and making some major changes in that. I think the folks on our side would prefer to leave it as is. And I also just want to say that I support our cervid deer farms in Minnesota. You know, we want to support farmers, and especially small farmers. All of us want to do that. And a lot of these cervid farms are just exactly that. They're family farms, smaller operations, and I think they do as well as they can, and want to be able to keep them there and keep those businesses going for themselves and their families down the road. So with that, one final comment. Representative Nelson mentioned the farmer-lender mediation situation and making really a pretty permanent and major change in some of the timelines with that. Well, back in 2016, there was a task force convened to study the farmer-lender mediation program. They made some changes, but never in that time back, this was 5 years ago now, was there ever an issue raised with the timeline process. And I think before we make some major changes like that, we should do that again and convene a task force to talk about things that we would like to see, things that would make the program better, rather than just adding additional days here in the legislature. So with that, Mr. Speaker, those are my thoughts. And again, I cannot support the bill because of these policy issues in here, and I would encourage a no vote to the agriculture bill. Thanks, Mr. Speaker.
Member from Rosso, Representative Burkle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I just want to expound a little on Representative Nelson's comments on Earth Day. Really do want to recognize the contribution of our farmers as the first and foremost environmentalists and stewards of the land. And in doing so, I think it's really important and imperative that we recognize and celebrate just the extraordinary efficiency and the productivity and the abundance that American farmers bring to us every day on our dinner plates. If you look at the statistics in the last few decades, the carbon footprint, for instance, to produce a gallon of milk is down 63%. Similar statistics in our beef industry, with 33% less land used and a 16% lower carbon footprint. Same in our hog industry. 75.9% less land used from 1960 to 2015, 25% less water. And if you look at the output in our egg industry, an industry with a 71% lower carbon footprint since 1960. It's incredible the abundance we have in this nation. So I think it's obvious that there's no better stewards of our environment than the American farmer. And with that, I'll address the ag bill itself. Appreciate the work and input of all our committee members as well, and our staff. And I applaud specifically the work done to alleviate the critical food supply chain issues that were exposed during the early stages of the COVID pandemic, and specifically the meat processing and inspection language in provisions in the bill. Very important. Other good things in the bill, of course, are the border-to-border broadband grant funding, and increased funding for farmer mental health and farm safety and food banks. But unfortunately, I cannot support the bill with the unnecessary and what I feel are just plain damaging changes to the Board of Animal Health and those provisions that raise fees on farmers. And with that, Mr. Speaker, members, I would urge a no vote on this bill and hope to see those provisions changed in the conference committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member from Dakota, Representative Hansen R.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I would encourage a yes vote for the bill. As it has been noted, this is Earth Day, and Minnesota is changing, just as our Earth is changing, just as our climate is changing. And with that change, our government needs to change. What we've heard today so far from the opposition is no change. Don't change anything. Don't change structure. Don't change fees. Don't change policy, but give us some more money. That's not where we need to be. We need to be looking at how can we do things better. And what this bill does is it starts to break those locks of tradition, those binding ties that say this is the way we've always done it. This is the way we're going to do it because this is the way we've done it. The changes that are started in this bill are minimal, but they're important because they start that change. And that fundamental change is to look at these agencies as working for all Minnesotans, not just the industry. This is something that has to occur throughout our government, working for the people. And it's happening without the government, where consumers want to be a part of the decision making. Consumers want to know their farmer. They want to know their producer. And what this bill does is it starts that investment of looking at emerging farmers and new farmers. Farmers who don't look like me or don't look like my brother who farms. New people who are wanting to be a part of the land, and the consumers who want to work with them. This bill starts that conversation. A couple of quick concerns. The Board of Animal Health represents people not just in the agriculture industry. It is supposed to protect livestock, but it also is supposed to protect our pets. I thank Chair Sundin for making the changes and providing for reform, very needed reform for the Board of Animal Health. On pesticides, a notification in this bill of what is in the seed treatment, saying that it could impact pollinators, kind of like the old cigarette warning on a carton of cigarettes, taking an educational rather than a regulatory approach to say maybe people don't know. So let's inform them of the impacts on the environment by these chemicals that are on the treated seed. That's a simple request, and it's a needed one, and I think it will be an important one to help provide that information to people so they can make decisions. Our world is changing, and this bill starts that change. Representative Anderson referenced significant funds, millions of dollars going to ethanol. What's in this bill are accountability measures that those people receiving the funds will have to meet, much more than what they had to do before. So rather than just providing the funds, are we seeing what they do? How are they used? Do they make an outcome that's better for all Minnesotans or just the well-connected few? I ask you for your support to begin working this bill as a beginning of a better Minnesota agriculture where many more people are involved, where many more people have the opportunity, where people can make the changes and be good consumers and good stewards of the land on this Earth Day.
The member from Wabasha, Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry. Mr. Speaker, first of all, I rise to point of order.
State your point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under Rule 2.32, Representative Winkler brought up earlier his offense to some of the comments that I brought forward earlier. I did some checking, Mr. Speaker. Apparently, I was off by 100 years. So had I said 300 to 400 years, my comments would have been factually accurate. And that raised the point, Mr. Speaker. I am becoming more and more offended at the majority's high level of management to the point where they don't allow us to speak here on the floor. We saw it last night. We're seeing this hypersensitivity in the leadership in the House Democrat caucus. They are attempting to squelch debate when nothing at all in anything I said earlier had any negative intentions. Apparently, I was off by 100 years in my comments. And to run to claim that you're offended by that, Mr. Speaker, it offends me for us not to have the ability to speak without being interrupted under a point of order that makes absolutely no sense. So that's my point of order, Mr. Speaker. And with that, I have a question, Mr. Speaker, on the bill that I'd like to ask the chair of the bill, if he would yield.
Representative Drazkowski, to which chair are you referring?
To the author of the bill, Mr. Chair.
The member from Carleton, Representative Sundin, will you yield?
He will.
He will yield. Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chair Sundin, Article 2, Section 1 of the bill talks about, or it actually gives the Department of Agriculture the ability to have a publicity representative. So members, let's look at what is happening here in the bill. We are giving the Department of Agriculture the ability to have a publicity representative. And Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, this exists in statute in section 15.057. There was a deliberate effort by past legislatures to say explicitly in statute that departments will not have publicity representatives. Apparently, they were attempting to reduce wasteful spending and outrageous growth in government is the only thing I can see, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Chair, could you tell us more about the origin of this section of statute, why it existed, and why we are permitting the Department of Agriculture to have a publicist?
The member from Carleton, Representative Sundin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The statute's in 17.03, 17.101, 17.1015, 17.102 are among the statutes that give the Minnesota Department of Agriculture the authority and obligation to promote and market Minnesota agricultural products. While we believe these statutes give us the authority to expend funds on publicity, we want to avoid any potential confusion that may arise. This is for publicity. This is for promoting Minnesota-grown products.
Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Chair Sundin. I still don't really realize or understand the history of this section of statute. Mr. Speaker, would the Chair Sundin yield again?
Representative Sundin, will you continue to yield?
Yes.
He will yield. Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Chair Sundin, why does this section of statute, Article 2, Section 1, Section 15.057, why does it exist?
Representative Sundin.
You know, that's state governments. You might want to ask Mike something, or Mike Nelson.
My understanding, you should, that question may be better directed to state government experts that would be within their purview.
Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I take that as I don't know. And it appears to me, Mr. Speaker, that past legislatures have attempted to stem the natural growth by government by having this statute in place. And we are going to give the Department of Agriculture the ability to have a publicist, apparently, Mr. Speaker, because they asked. Now, I don't see that as the right reason to do this. I'm troubled by the fact that we're seeing growth in government, not only in this provision, but elsewhere in this bill and elsewhere in every single bill that's come before this legislature this session. Members, Mr. Speaker, people of Minnesota, the growth of your government here is happening exponentially under the authoritarian rule of the Democrats that won't even let Republicans speak. Now, I think it's important, Mr. Speaker, members and people of the public, citizens of Minnesota, to which we serve here in the Minnesota House of Representatives, to understand the reason we have particular laws in place, and to willy-nilly respond to the Department of Agriculture because they asked for it is not a good enough reason. They have their motivations. Government's motivation is it wants to grow. And that's what we have here, just another element, another example of the growth of government accommodated by the Democrats whenever the government comes and asks. We know why government is so rich here today and why the people of Minnesota have been made poor through this pandemic. We continue to pander to the government in this body. We've got to turn it a different direction. This particular provision in the bill is only a symptom of a bigger and worse disease. Mr. Speaker, members, I encourage a no vote on this bill. Thank you.
The member from Koochiching, Representative Eklund.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. And I want to address a couple of things in a bill that I think is a very good bill for the state of Minnesota. First off, like everybody, I want to make sure that we thank staff. We have terrific staff on the Ag Committee, both partisan and nonpartisan staff. They provide a tremendous effort to the state of Minnesota. Mr. Speaker and members, we've seen this past year how important broadband is to the state of Minnesota. I certainly hope that we never have to go to the long-term distant learning, back to the long-term distant learning or anything like that. But we've seen some good things out of it too. We're saving counties money. The county commissioners aren't having to travel all over the state to go to meetings. We're finding out that Zoom does work, as much as maybe some of us dislike it, but it's going to help our small government units bill to be a little more thrifty. So I'm very thankful for this provision in the broadband provision in the bill, because I think it'll serve to make Minnesota better. And then the other thing I want to address is the Board of Animal Health issue. Mr. Speaker and members, the times they are changing. This has been a good, the Board of Animal Health is a tremendous asset and resource to the state of Minnesota. But it is time that it changes. We need to adjust the size. It's long overdue, and that's not going to take away from the good work that they do protecting the food supply of the state of Minnesota. So, Mr. Speaker and members, I ask for a green vote.
The member from Carlton, Representative Sundin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, thanks to all the staff and committee members that participated in putting this bill together. I really appreciate your passion and your time on this. We've heard all the scripted remarks. I'm going to go off script for a little bit and do something I rarely do on the House floor and enter a personal story. And it dates back about 121 years or thereabouts. It's about an immigrant that came across in the United States in the dark of night, crossed a body of water, and got into Minnesota. And nobody knew he had crossed, him and his buddy. But they crossed in, and they met up the next day with a representative of a U.S. senator. And they walked 20 miles southward from the Canadian border. And the representative told them, go ahead, here's a survey stakes, here's land, pick out your 160 acres, you can farm it, you can be a productive part of Minnesota for 5 years, and the land is yours. Well, that fella did. And he worked that land, logged, farmed, and then his son joined him. They tapped into the resources of the University of Minnesota and developed a nice little dairy farm. That's where I grew up. That was a true opportunity for an immigrant. And when you have people coming to just work hard, be productive, learn the system, tap into the resources that the University of Minnesota did provide so they could develop a productive farm, it doesn't get any better than that. Most of the financing in this bill today enhances the work that the Department of Agriculture has done and will do into the future. And it does address the emerging farmers as well. We can't give land away like we did 120 years ago. That's getting pretty well eaten up. But we have to switch gears and help emerging farmers. Maybe they're in an urban setting, maybe they're out there on traditional farmland looking for more farmland or looking to break into the industry. But either way, this bill addresses both the established farmers and the emerging farmers. Minnesotans deserve this, and I'm proud to be an author of the bill. And I ask for your support.
Seeing no further discussion to Senate File 958, the clerk will take the roll.
I'll show you.
Members who are voting remotely, please vote. Will the chief clerk call the names of all those members who haven't voted yet?
Baker.
Baker votes no.
Baker, no. Bliss.
Bliss, no.
Bliss, no. Gomez.
Gomez, aye.
Gomez, aye. Grunhagen.
Grunehagen, no.
Grunhagen, no. Haley. Haley, no. Hausman.
Hausman, aye.
Hausman, aye. Heinrich.
Heinrich, no.
Heinrich, no. Hollins.
Collins, aye.
Hollins, aye. Kosnick. Kosnick. Mason.
Mason, aye.
Mason, aye. McDonald.
McDonald, no.
McDonald, no. Moran.
Moran, aye.
Moran, aye. Sandsted.
Samstead, aye.
Sandsted, aye. Swazinski.
Swazinski, no.
Swazinski, no. Speaker Hortman.
Speaker Hartman, aye.
Speaker Hortman, aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 69 ayes and 63 nays, the bill is passed as amended and its title agreed to.